Hello. How are you? I'm an American, so I pay a lot for healthcare. So, why is my life expectancy so low? That's what I want to know. TLDR News Global. Go check them out. Link down below.
This video was brought to you by Brilliant. The
Brilliant.
United States is the world's remaining superpower. Its support for Ukraine has been vital in them being able to repel the Russian invaders. Its GDP per capita is high, its economy is strong, and its nukes are plentiful.
That's for sure.
However, despite these advantages, it seems that the US isn't exactly leading the world when it comes to life expectancy.
Right.
In fact, on this metric, the US performs pretty miserably.
Wait, it actually went down? Is that because of COVID? Yeah, I guess COVID. Wow, that's actually crazy to see the impact of COVID like that.
So, in this video, we're going to have a look at how the US's life
Oh, shoot. That's pathetic. 81. Wow. Compared all the way down to like 77, 78.
expectancy
That's a huge difference.
compares to other countries.
It couldn't be all the McDoubles, could it?
What factors lead into this, and whether it has a chance of improving. So let's start simply by looking at the data on this.
Okay.
Back in the 1990s, US life expectancy was actually not too bad at
Hey, look, we were beating you there for
all.
some amount of time.
It compared reasonably well to other Western nations, with life expectancy of 75.4 years.
What happened right here in 1991? Hey, that's the year I was born. And then all of a sudden it started getting wider and wider. I mean, really, the UK just stayed on the same trajectory. And the US just started kind of petering off.
Other comparable countries had an average life expectancy of just over 77 years. In fact, the UK had a near identical life expectancy in 1990, with 75.7 years, only 0.3 years higher than the US. Since then, though, things have gotten quite a bit worse. While other countries have seen their life expectancy improve, the US's life expectancy has lagged. While the US's life expectancy had risen to a high of 79 years in 2013, it stagnated and declined back to 78.8 years in 2017. Following a brief rise back to 79.1 years in 2019, it fell off a cliff in 2020 and then 2021. As of 2021, life expectancy had dipped.
That's pretty interesting that in 2021, we went down further and you guys went up.
To 77.2 years, which was roughly the life expectancy of the UK back in 2003. While other comparable countries also saw a decrease in life expectancy on the back of the coronavirus pandemic, it did improve again rapidly. This just wasn't seen in the US. In fact, if we dig down a little deeper, we see that the situation is even worse than it seems. As John Byrne Murdoch from the FT points out, the town with the lowest life expectancy in the UK is Blackpool.
Sorry if I'm distracted. There's some Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm walking. They just knocked on my door. Now I'm walking them, watching them knock on the neighbor's door.
A town which now has the same life expectancy
Hold on. I'm going to be too distracted. They left
as the average
after
of the
about
US.
20 minutes.
Now, it's worth mentioning that the FT here uses a different measure of life expectancy, which makes comparisons very difficult, as it doesn't align with other life expectancy measures.
Gotcha.
But the point remains that the US's life expectancy has gotten significantly worse in recent years. What's interesting here is how life expectancy relates to income. The gap is widest between the UK and US for those at the bottom of the pay scale.
Of course, that makes total sense because income has what? Little to no. I'm surprised it tails off at all because I would have thought it had no effect on your healthcare, considering it's free. But in America, of course, you're going to see that because poor people can't even afford to go. They just don't go to the doctor. So why even does it tail off like this here in England? Is it because you can afford to get like more elective surgeries and pay for different type of things like premium services, or what? Is it because you have a job that allows you to go to the doctor more often?
Blackpool is a poor town and has the lowest life expectancy of any town in the UK. But even still, people in Blackpool
Or maybe it's got to do with the type of food you can afford?
are expected to live a full 5 years longer than the town in the US with the worst life expectancy. As we move up the pay bracket, the life expectancy gap begins to narrow, especially when we get to the top 1%. Now, it's reasonable to question then why this is the case, and there are a few different reasons. The primary factor driving the decline in life expectancy is young deaths, mainly from drug overdoses, gun violence, and
That makes sense. Fentanyl is gone absolutely crazy rampant here in America. It's crazy. Like, I actually know people who have lost their lives from fentanyl. And I mean, I know multiple people who have OD'd. So that is no joke. And it's mind-boggling how it's just on the rise.
dangerous driving. In a separate FT article, Bern Murdoch creates counterfactuals where life expectancy is calculated if these factors were not present, comparing this to the actual life expectancy of men and women. Now, the gap between life expectancy of men in England and Wales and the US was 3.6 years in 2019. Now, if we compare that to the counterfactual with no drug-related deaths, this tightens to only 2.9 years. If we look at the counterfactual with no homicide and suicide gun deaths, this tightens.
I would have thought that would have brought it up a lot more, honestly, because I figured a lot of young deaths are due to drugs here in America. I mean, I know they are. And I feel like that issue is a lot worse here in America than in Europe. I don't know for sure, but
Tightens to 3.2 years. Without road deaths, this tightens to 3.3 years, and without drug, violence, and road deaths, this tightens to 2.3 years.
okay.
The gap in life expectancy between women in England and Wales and the US was 2.9 years in 2019. Again, looking at the counterfactuals, we see that they tightened to 2.6 years with no drug-related deaths, 2.8 with no homicide, suicide or gun deaths, 2.8 with no road deaths, and 2.4 with no drug, violence or road deaths. Of all of these counterfactuals, the most shocking finding is that the opioid epidemic in the US has wiped out a year off of life expectancy for males. Now, you may be wondering how
How crazy is that?
this stacks up to the amount of lives lost to COVID. Again, the data we were looking at only goes up to 2019.
I mean, it really vast majority affects older people.
So, there were in total about 9.1 million years of life lost to COVID. In 2021 alone, there were about 9.4 million years of life lost to external causes. That's drug deaths, driving deaths, etc. The point here is that while the US did certainly lose a lot of life to the coronavirus pandemic, even more life was lost to these causes. Again, a good way to compare this is by looking into the counterfactuals.
But it's still crazy that COVID added up to all those other things combined.
Even if we compare the observed life expectancy to the counterfactual with no US deaths, we see that life expectancy still declines, albeit not as swiftly or as much as with COVID deaths. This is all while other countries...
Hold up. This is without COVID? Oh no. That's horrible. It's plummeting even without? Oh geez.
such as Austria, the Netherlands and the UK saw life expectancy largely remain the same. So while COVID certainly did lead to deaths in the US, this isn't why life expectancy has been decreasing and is so unfavourable. Ultimately, the US has a problem with drugs that has caused a huge amount of death in younger people, which in turn brings the average down. When this is combined with road deaths and homicide, the problem becomes apparent. For those of you with an understanding of the US political system, you'll know that these aren't simple problems to resolve. The drug problem in particular is one that states around the world have been trying to address, to varying effect. Similarly, the US has a relaxed approach to gun ownership.
God, that is just so, like, oh my gosh, what a epic failure on the United States' part in so many different ways. How is that possible that our life expectancy is plummeting in just a couple of years because of drugs? I really don't know how that's possible. Oh, wow.
which, as a result, has led to higher homicide rates. And again, the US has a relatively low legal driving age, with it being as low as 14 in some states.
You can get a permit. I don't know any states where you can get a license, but you can get a permit at 15 in a lot of states, 15 and a half to 16.
This
14
has contributed to the high number of deaths on the roads. So while lawmakers will be keen to try and reverse this declining life expectancy trend,
But you can't drink a beer for 7 more years.
seems like it'll be some task. And considering the huge debate in the US about things like gun control, at least right now, this seems unlikely.
Now, we'll have to monitor how this story
Grandmas for gun control.
plays out over the next weeks, days, and even minutes. But while we're waiting, it only takes a few minutes every day to massively improve your
With Brilliant.
skill.
I guess that's the end of the video. Wow. That was terrifying. I really did not expect the end of that graph to not be entirely only influenced by COVID. The fact that that's because of drugs and that in just the last couple of years, life expectancy has plummeted that much in America, I did not know that. That should be headline news. Wow. Horrible. Horrible. Americans make healthcare too expensive to use. Eat like they have free healthcare. Drive everywhere. Don't walk or exercise. Also, Americans, why are we dying young? Then toss in some fentanyl. And we never had a chance. Dang. Thank you for watching. I hope you guys are doing good. Don't do drugs, kids. Actually, that's what you should be telling me. I'm the American here. All right. I'll see you tomorrow. Goodbye.